We're going to start out with Lexington/Richland 5 school district. And we have 3 panelists. We're going to talk with them a little bit about what they've done to improve attendance, particularly after the pandemic issues that we've experienced. And then we'll have about 10 minutes where you as participants can just pose questions to them. And these will be open questions. You can ask them anything you like, and they'll respond to you, or you can share something you've done perhaps. And then we'll switch gears and we'll go over to Fort Mill, York School District 4. And we've got 3 panelists there. And we'll do the same thing. And I would be pretty sure that today you will hear some things and learn some things that you may be able to use to improve attendance in your school district. We all know that the pandemic threw us for a loop on attendance, and so now we're all trying to recover from that. So let's begin. I want to introduce our panel from Lexington-Richland 5. If I may, we've got Kelly Brown. Kelly is the Student Services Officer. We've got Luann Grawl. Luann is Assistant Principal at Dutch Fork Middle School. And we've got Michelle Johnson, who is Assistant Principal at Seven Oaks Elementary. So we've got on the screen now, we'll have these 3 and myself, and we're going to have a little conversation. And then you'll have, after about 20 minutes, you'll have a chance to ask them some questions. So first of all, Kelly, you're at the district office. You are the Student Services Officer, and I'm sure you've got plenty of things to do. So that you all know, Lexington School District Richland 5 is a district of about 17,000 students. Keep in mind that the 2020-21, which is the most recent good data we've got, the 2020-21 statewide chronic absentee rate was a little over 20%. And that being, there's a definition for that, but you all probably familiar with it, that being that students are absent 10% or more of the days attended at any given point in time. And so yet here we've got Lexington-Richland 5, and they, for that same period of time, had a 16% chronic absentee rate. So they did something right. They did some good things, because they're certainly in the better half of the state. And a lot of districts had, if it's a 20% average chronic absentee rate, a lot of districts had a mean, I'm sure, in the high 20s, 30s, and maybe even 40% to pull that rate up to 20 plus for the state. So Kelly, you're at the central office. Here's my question for you. Tell us about the shutdown from the pandemic. How did you guys, what happened when you shut down in March of 20, and then what happened? How did you come back? When, how, and how did that work for you guys?
So we shut down and started our online virtual program for all of our students. And, one of the things that we really wrestled with towards the end of our shutdown to the beginning of transitioning students back into the school building, continuing the challenge for students to continue to believe in the educational process, that school is still in session, and that there are expectations there, whether you are signing in at on your device at home or transitioning back to face-to-face. It was the reminding parents and reminding students that we have got to get back to focusing on teaching and learning, and you showing up every day, logging in or coming to campus is the first step to all of that. So so that was our big struggle when we went to virtual and transitioned back to face-to-face.
When you went back to face-to-face, Kelly, how did that go? Did you do a split schedule? Did you do, how did it start?
We went back face-to-face, normal schedule, and then we had a district, as a district, we launched different levels of mitigation. So if we had a green level, then all schools were clear, because the year before we shut down the whole district. And what we saw in our data, as we collected data, is it was one area or one school that were having the concern, and this other school on the other side of the district, they were having no issues, no reports, no symptoms, no showings. And so what we did to start the new school year is we divided different levels of mitigation for each school. So if a school was on green, then all was clear. The numbers being reported to us were good. Our visitor policy changed. However, if you were at the level of mitigation of orange, then no visitors on campus, or a class may be quarantined. So the levels of interventions that we gave each school changed, which allowed us to really zone in on the levels of support that we needed. So if we had a lot of students missing in one school, we knew, or a lot of students in one school that were quarantined, or a lot of students in the school that were missing, we could really activate our support team there with our social workers, our clinical counselors. Sometimes we had to get DSS involved. So we were able to really fine tune how we were going to intervene with these families and students.
Okay. From the district level, Kelly, what type of programs, what type of interventions did you all launch and promote from the district level?
Sure. We had a COVID support team that we provided at each school, so that if a student was quarantined, if a student was diagnosed with COVID, if a class was quarantined, then that student was contacted by a member of our COVID support team. Have you gotten the assignments? Do you need the assignments? Do you know how to log in? Do you have Wi-Fi? Do you have resources that you need while you are at home? How can we help as a school to make the transition back to school smooth for you? So every school and every family had access to that support team. And as they transitioned back to school, we would follow up. Are you getting caught up? Are you caught up with all of your classes? Are you transitioning back okay? We also were able to implement the support of our social workers at each school. We had a plan that if we had some students that we know they're still in the neighborhood, they're not coming to school though. And they're not coming to school because they have fears and they have experiences that they dealt with during the pandemic. So how can we help with that? So if we became aware of a student or a situation or a family dynamic that was hurting their attendance, then we were able to launch a system of care to them as well through our social workers and our clinical counselors.
So it sounds like you had some COVID related attendance problems that weren't really just being diagnosed with COVID.
Correct. We ran into, my grandmother is living with us and she has this condition, and we don't want to expose her to the children if they're going back faces. So those are real dynamics. So we knew we could remind families and students of the law. We could remind them of policy, but we also have to hear their stories that they were dealing with and their circumstances, and how do we merge the two to make it work? Because we know law's not changing, but we know teaching and learning has got to make it meaningful to you. So how do we merge those two to make it work for us?
Understood. Let's switch to Michelle for a second. Michelle, you're the assistant principal there at Seven Oaks Elementary. Tell us what you saw about attendance when school resumed.
Yes, good afternoon. I think here at the elementary level at Seven Oaks, we saw for our school, we had probably about 50% of our population return face-to-face. We had students that remained in our virtual 5 learning program. And so that was one of the things that we kind of merged with our attendance. As Ms. Brown shared, one of the things that we faced was a fear. There were parents who recognized that they were not able to be necessarily supportive in the 5 environment, which is the virtual environment. So their children needed to return to school face to face, but they were afraid about what would happen. And so oftentimes there would be phone calls. My child's nose is running and I'm afraid that they may have COVID, so they're not going to be at school today. And so we had to walk through some conversations, which here at Seven Oaks, we like to refer to as compassionate accountability, as we talk with our parents and families about what the expectations are for attendance. So it was a very real thing. And we had to recognize and adjust to our families' emotions and feelings, but supporting what our district was recommending and suggesting as procedures for our attendance.
Well, that term compassionate accountability, is that a Seven Oaks term, or is that something that you guys came up with? That's a great term.
Yes, that's a Michelle Johnson Seven Oaks term. And that's what we do is we funnel into the what we like to say is the A team, the attendance team here at Seven Oaks, as we encourage and educate our families. And the compassion and accountability refers really to what Ms. Brown is stating as important. It's your story, my story, our story. And our story is important. And so we always want to listen and affirm, but we also want to educate so that families understand that attendance matters every single day. When you're in the building, we can teach and educate you. When you're not here, we can't provide you with the access to the content that we need you to have to be successful.
So it sounds like that the primary focus of your contacts and your attendance team, your A team, at your level would be the parents. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And we do a wraparound support. I think that's really important. So when we're meeting and having conversations about our attendance, the social worker is present, our registrar is involved, so that we have point of contact for our families with various people that they get a chance to hear from, but that we also make sure that the story that they share is being attended to and that needs are being met.
Okay, one last question for you, Michelle. Now that we're into you've opened up for the 22-23 school year, and we hope COVID free pretty much. We think we're beyond it. We hope we are. What are you seeing now with attendance? What's our status there at your school now?
I think very transparently, we're seeing families getting used to being back in school and doing school as close to normal as possible. We still are kind of mitigating some fears that families have, but I think the big thing that Seven Oaks is focusing on is educating at every point of contact what the expectation is for attendance. I have to share honestly that we have a few friends that I've already had to make some phone calls to and share our expectations with. But we kind of walk through that together. So our families are back, and we're at probably the highest enrollment since I have been here, which I'm very excited about. But it's an education process for us, for families to understand that you communicate with us. And I'll share this just to say that once we kind of put into motion the expectation for communication, we get phone calls every day for families sharing with us that they're not going to be here and why they're not going to be here. And we thank them for that, because it's kind of gotten out on the street that it's important to communicate with your school about where your babies are. So I'm feeling very good about that here at Seven Oaks. And I think our district is doing a great job with that too, about communication.
You referenced the term reestablish expectations, and I think that's been a real challenge for us, to reestablish it, particularly with parents at your level. We're back at schools. Attendance is important. We preached attendance to these folks for years and years, and then we suddenly said, "Oh, but by the way, don't worry about it." So I think that's great. Let me switch to Luann for a minute. Luann, you were the assistant principal there at Dutch Fork Middle School. What'd you run into with the middle school kids when you came back?
They quickly discovered that they liked sleeping late and staying up late at the same time. Whereas her main point of contact, where Michelle shared that her main point of contact is the parents, a lot of times our first point of contact is to talk to the kid. We've noticed you've missed a lot of days, or you're coming in late. That's one of the big issues we've been tackling is kids coming in an hour or two after the school day started. And we start talking to the kids about, why are you late? What does your morning routine look like? And talking to those students. So then when we bring the parents in to have those conversations, we've got a clearer picture, and we include the kids in what are some things you can do to help yourself get ready in the morning. Because frequently we'll hear from the parents that, well, they just won't get up in the morning, or I can't get them to wake up. I can't make them do this anymore because our kids are physically larger sometimes than their parents. And one of the things we talk about is that personal responsibility. And what is your goal in life, and how does attendance in school impact that later on as you move into the workforce? What is on a job if you're not there on a regular basis?
Luann, did you see any particular behaviors from teachers that helped you guys improve?
We did. We had the teachers, even when we went virtual, we would have teachers who would reach out to the parents. If a kid didn't log in for 2 days, the teachers were reaching out to the parents when we were actually shut down, going, we haven't seen your kid log on in 2 days. What can we do to help? And then the teachers were contacting us saying, this parent says they're having trouble with Wi-Fi, and our district had a program set up so we could then contact the district and say, this family's encountering this, what can we do to help? So the teachers were really important in being able to be that first line of contact. And that's one of the things we've noticed, especially this year, our teachers have been really good about if the kid's absent for 2 days and we haven't heard anything after the 2 days, they'll reach out to the family or to the student and the parent and go, hey, we've missed you the last 2 days. What's going on?
You make a real good point. This is something we've learned at the National Dropout Prevention Center over the years working with these issues, is that the whole staff has to focus on attendance. You can't just say, well, we've got an attendance clerk for that, let her do it. You know, you got to have everybody has to focus on attendance, and that's when it really improves. I'll call attention to a contrast between Michelle's comments and Luann's comments. You know, at the elementary level, the parents and guardians are the keepers of attendance for the most part. That is in their hands, or hopefully it is anyway. And then when you get to the middle school, as the kid gets older, somehow those kids wrestle from the parents that control, and before you know it, the kid's in control of attendance. And so you've got to focus your efforts at a different target at different levels. That's a very good point that the two of you make.